We do have a quorum plus Scott's here, and Susan just stepped out for a minute, so we're full and ready to go. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. John, do you want people to pull the mask down when they're speaking to the microphone?
However you'd like to handle it.
Okay, I think we're all, yeah, everybody can, who's ever speaking, just pull your mask down. I think we're okay. Okay, first item is the approval of the agenda. Do I have any comments on that?
Move the agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Next
item is the approval of the minutes of November 20th, our last meeting in 2021. Has everybody had an opportunity to read that? Are there any comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Announcements. I have two announcements. One, Susan pointed out that our April meeting was Easter weekend, so we're going to move that to the next week, April 23rd. People will check their calendars and let me know if that's okay. If it's not, we can maybe move it the week before Easter weekend, but right now it's hopefully the 23rd. And my other announcement would be, if we're all in agreement with what the 10-year plan looks like at this point. I know we can't finish it until we get all the numbers, and we can't even paginate it because those numbers may change the paging and things like that. I would like the commission to transmit that to the mayor and town council after this meeting so that they can have an opportunity over the next several months, along with any input from our residents to what is proposed. So unless there's going to be an objection, I'll make that announcement after we talk about 10-year plan. Scott?
So when, in our last meeting, we talked about Mark and I doing some updates and tweaks to the Green Bethany initiative.
Yep.
We actually met this week and began to draft a couple of things on that. Nothing's earth-shattering, I don't think, at all. So it's just up to you as to whether you want to transmit that before we update that section. It could go either way, really. I don't think it's going to be anything contentious.
Yeah, I think I'd rather give you and the rest of the council and the mayor as much time as I possibly can. We'll make in the transmittal memo. We'll make notice that we are going to be adding information, minor, to it so that they're aware of it. So. Ms. Mayor, do you have any, would you like to make any comments on this at all?
No, we're just grateful. Whenever you get it to us, would be perfect.
Okay.
This month would really be helpful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the next item is the announcements of what the town is doing. Susan, could you update us on any comments about the non-residential design review committee?
We did not meet.
Did not meet, okay.
Had one coming up, but we didn't meet.
Okay. And Scott, could you update us on, well, you didn't have a December meeting, did you?
Right, we didn't have a December meeting. Our January meeting is next week. Well, really, the only thing on the agenda is the continued discussion and possible vote on lowering the speed limit with our neighboring towns.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments or questions on, from the audience to any of the commissioners? Okay, good, thank you. New business. The Planning Commission of the Town of Bethany Beach will consider an application for petitioning for property identified as Lot 12, Block 27 at 515 Hudson Avenue in the R1 zoning district. Susan, I'll ask Lou's comment. Is everything, all the i's dotted and the t's crossed?
It's been advertised and posted within the allotted time.
Great, thank you. Josh?
Susan, have there been any comments to the postings?
No.
Thank you.
Hey, Susan, you want to highlight the request? Oh.
Okay. This is a request from Andrea and Christopher D. Degnan Jr., owners of Lot 12, Block 27, known as 515 Hudson Avenue, and they are requesting that the parcel be partitioned into 2 lots. This property is located in the R1 zoning district and contains 10,000 square feet of area. Per the table of dimensional requirements, lots in the R1 zoning district are required to have a minimum of 5,000 square feet and 40 feet of frontage on a street. This lot has 113 feet of frontage on Hudson Avenue and 70 feet of frontage on 2nd Street. The lot is improved with 1 single-family dwelling that is located in the center of the lot. And the history of the lot, because it's an unusual shape, is as follows. In January of 2009, Craftsman Land Holdings, LLC, owners of 513 Hudson Avenue, applied for and were granted a building permit for construction of a new dwelling on Lot 3, Block 27. Also around that time, they entered into an agreement with Ms. Rhine, who was the owner of 515 Hudson Avenue, to sell her a portion of their lot. The portion sold was the front yard on Hudson Avenue. The area conveyed was approximately 610 square feet. Ms. Rhine then conveyed back to the sellers an easement across this portion for access to parking in the front door. By this action, 513 Hudson now contained 5,159 square feet, still exceeding the minimum size required in the R1 district, and 515 Hudson now contained 10,001 square feet. In April of 2009, a sketch survey was submitted to then Building Inspector John Eckridge, showing the property at 515 Hudson as with the area from Lot 3 and further partitioned into 2 lots. That's right, Lot 3 is the one next door. Excuse me. Mr. Eckridge signed off on the plat, and it was subsequently recorded at Sussex County Recorder of Deeds. In September of 2009, these actions were discovered by the town, and it was further discovered that the property owners had not applied to or been granted any approvals by the Planning Commission for either combining any of the lots or a portion thereof, or any partitioning of the lots as required by the code. Both parties were notified of this omission. Section 410(7)(a), relocation of property lines, states that applicants intending to relocate property lines shall file an application to the Planning Commission. Section 410(19), combining, states that subdividers intending to combine two or more or portions of 2 or more lots of record into 1 or more lots of record shall file an application to the Planning Commission. Based on the town's attorney's review of the matter and his recommendations, the town did not pursue any course of action on that matter at that time. Several years later, Ms. Ryan wanted to sell her property, but the town could not approve the survey showing the property as subdivided into 2 lots with a dwelling located in the center. In order to rectify this, Ms. Ryan applied to the Planning Commission to then combine the lots again. The Planning Commission considered and approved this on September 17th, 2016. So that's the whole history of, it was this, then it was divided, now it's combined again, and so now the new owners are requesting to petition the lot again, but this time they are intending to relocate the house to front on 2nd Street. The newly created lot would be Lot 4, Block 27, 520 2nd Street. Sections of the existing house would be demolished to make it fit on the lot. The front setback of 20 feet, rear setback of 15 feet, and side setbacks of 7 feet would all be met according to their sketch, and the lot coverage is shown to be approximately 33%. Lot 12, Block 27, 515 Hudson, would be a vacant lot with a buildable area after setbacks of approximately 1,500 square feet. Pursuant to Chapter 410, Subdivision of Land, Section 410-18, should this be approved, the approved plats shall be recorded in the Office of Recorder of Deeds, Georgetown, Delaware, by the building inspector within 14 days from the date of approval by the Planning Commission. The applicants have given no timeline as to when the dwelling is to be relocated. If approved, the Planning Commission should consider approving extending the time in which the plats are required to be filed by a specific time period to be adhered to. And the following information was included in your files. It was from the that's not the right, from the combining, a copy of the approved survey of the combining, and a copy of the sketch survey submitted to the county and accepted as partitioned. Those are the old ones. A copy of the survey showing existing conditions, a copy of the proposed partitioning showing the 2 lots and the house relocated, the application, and copy of the property owners within 200 feet.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Can I make
Scott?
one potentially important note? I was actually the project architect on 513 Hudson. My former employer was one of the partners in Craftsman LLC, and I was at an early meeting where this like selling a part of that property to Miss Ryan was discussed. I realize that those are previous owners. I just want to make sure that people are aware of that in case I need to recuse. I also know I'm not a voting member of the commission, but in case I need to recuse myself on this matter.
Well, you'll be our second resident expert then, Susan. Okay, thank you, Scott. Any commissioners have a question? John?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the applicants have anything they'd like to present, but would like to hear from the applicant if they do
Okay.
before we take any action.
Would the applicant like to, okay, if you use a microphone, state your name and address, please.
Thank you, sir. Morning. My name is this microphone on?
You have to push the button until it's green.
Okay. So you're recording this, obviously, so you need me to use the microphone because I think I could be heard otherwise.
Actually, you're on
I see.
film also, yeah, this is.
Very good,
It
very good.
used to be we were too ugly for anything but radio, but they put us on TV.
Well, necessity requires
Yeah.
action sometimes. My name, again, is Fred Townsend. I'm with the law firm of Hudson Jones, Jaywork and Fisher in the Lewis, Delaware office, and I've been retained by the applicants, Andrea and Chris Degnan, who are behind me, to ask for your favorable consideration of this application. So good morning to you and to the mayor and to Ms. Frederick and to staff. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. We've just heard a little bit of history on the property, and I think it's certainly new to me, and I believe it's new to the applicants, this sordid past of the lot having been subdivided without first meeting the zoning criteria or the ordinance that requires the planning commission to hear and approve or deny an application such as this. Your record includes the surveys that show the existing parcel as improved and as it would be proposed if approved. And the only thing I have that I'd like to submit, and again, I intend to make very brief comments, is just a snapshot of the county the county tax map showing the nature of the lots in the nearby vicinity. Could I bring that up to you and pass it out, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the purpose of sharing this with you is just so you can conclude that the nature of the surrounding area includes parcels that would be roughly of the same dimensions as what's being proposed. You can see to the left of our parcel along Tingle Road is a number of lots, each of which would have dimensions comparable to what is proposed for parcel 515, as well as to the bottom of the page, there are a number of parcels that are of comparable dimension to what's proposed. So to the extent that the nature of the surrounding area is a factor in the granting of the approval, I would submit that the application requested would not result in a lot that is out of character with the area. I'd also, just for the record, indicate that there are no irregularities of shape. I mean, there is an irregularity there along Hudson Road, but there are no irregularities in the proposed lots which would make either of them undevelopable. There are no elevation issues, no natural features that would impact the ability to develop either of the resulting lots, which I think could be a factor in the granting or the denying of the approval that's requested. One thing that is not in the record, and it's certainly not the kind of thing we could make contractual or a condition of approval, is that these owners are Wilmington. They're Delawareans. They're from Wilmington, and they have family in the very nearby in Ocean View, actually. And their plan is, and of course it's subject to a number of contingencies and things falling into place, would be for the existing home to be relocated on the 2nd Street parcel that would be created, and for a family member to purchase that from them and reside there. So that's, I can't represent that could be an appropriate condition because obviously a number of contingencies would have to fall into place, but that is the desired plan. That's the first hope that the Degnans have. Also, I have Starlight Builders with me here today to answer questions about what it might take, if you had any that I couldn't answer, to affect the demolition or relocation of the existing home. It's my understanding that given the environment that we're in, that there's both a permit that would be required of Bethany. There would also be permitting requirements of the county. And given the environment we're in, as I said, one of the big concerns would be that any approval that we receive would allow for sufficient time to get the work done, because obviously the subdivision plat would not be effective until such time as the existing home was relocated in an appropriate location on one of the resulting lots, actually the 2nd Street lot. So we think an aggressive time period would be 3 months, but I think we could accept 3 months. We could commit to promptly filing the permit applications in order to move the home. But, given that given that we don't have total control over everything necessary to physically move the home, and that there are permitting requirements, we would ask for some, I think, reasonable period of time within which to effect the relocation of that home. So I think we could live with 3 months. We might like 4. That's our request. If I could introduce the owners now, or if you have specific questions of me or questions of the owners, I'd be happy to introduce them to you.
Thank you. Anybody?
I'd be interested, sir, in hearing from the company that's going to move it, what their situation is. I know lots of people, lots of places don't have workers and so forth. I just want some sense of, give you a reasonable, if it's approved, a reasonable time, recognizing what the current circumstances are.
Thank you, sir. I'd be happy to ask Mr. Mario Rocco to join us at the microphone.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mario Rocco, the Operations Director for Sea Light. And as Fred had indicated, we have informed our house mover. It's John Davison with East Coast Movers, and he is in the queue. But his backlog is long, but he would squeeze us in once we get all the required permits and any little site work. So that's where the 90 days constricted period of time. If we could have 120. We would be able to move the house. Any other specific questions, I'd be happy to field.
Diane?
I guess I have more of a procedural question. It might be for Susan. In the past, I know when we were subdividing a property or a lot, and there was a house on it, the house had to be moved before it was divided. Does this house have to be relocated before we do the property division?
In the case of where they were going to tear the house down, I required them to procure the demolition permit first.
Okay.
In this case, and we'll have another one coming up that has a similar problem, I found it not practical or for them to take a leap of faith on moving the house because of the unusual lot and that's why I'm suggested that we look at the time period, if this is approved, for recording and make note of what that should be. I think for them to move the house and then come here would have put them in a...
No, I understand. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Susan, do you have a time frame in mind if this is approved?
I think 3 months would be sufficient. Everyone's busy right now. A lot of construction is going on, and I'm not seeing. Materials is part of the problem in getting materials, but I'm seeing work progress at a reasonable pace.
So is that at least 3 months, or is that 3 months?
3 months and that would be, all I would need for that would be permits to be issued and a foundation. And this is important because they have said that they have measured this house and it fits here. So we need to have the house trimmed up and picked up, and it can be sitting on as long as it's off the one lot. I think that satisfies all I need for recording. They can then have, when they go to get their permits for doing the foundation work and all of that, then they would get a permit from me for the foundation, and they'd get a permit for the county. So the county would then get this house located on that lot. But I think to just pick it up and move it over would be sufficient for a recording.
John?
I am not a, I'm not a surveyor. I'm not a lot of things, actually. But I want to just pursue what we've just been talking about, because from a layman's standpoint, I'm looking at the survey of 5/6/19 that shows the existing dwelling. And then looking at the survey of 9/27/21, it shows the relocated dwelling, which is rotated. And just from a layman's point of view, that the size, the length of the house as it currently exists, something's going to have to be taken off that in order to rotate it and meet the guidelines. And I just need an explanation or an understanding of what you're taking off and what that entails. And I ask that in the context of now this whole discussion about how long, if approved, how long to give you guys the opportunity to do that. Am I making any sense to everybody?
You're making perfect sense to me. And it is evident that the width of the house, if you want to refer to it, the width or the length of the house is larger than would be able to fit on the resulting lot. You're quite correct. There is a garage, and I'm going to ask for Mr. Rocco to speak to that in more detail here, but there's a garage on the existing home that will need to be removed. And
Right, so that part, again, I'm looking at 5/6/19, the part of the house behind the gravel driveway, that's the garage or airway or whatever, that would have to come off the house, right?
Yeah, we need to remove the garage and a small portion of the front.
Right?
So we'd have to do the demolition prior to the move, and we would demo that, and then we would pick up the house, turn it 90 degrees, and then set it in place on the proposed new lot.
Gotcha. So that part, the garage, is just going to be demolished. You're not looking to separate that and somehow include that on the reoriented.
No,
Got it.
no, if as the Degnas had indicated, they have a family member that may be considering purchasing the newly formed lot, we may elevate that house to have, since we have height availability, and then maybe put a garage underneath or whatnot.
I
But
gotcha.
that is yet to be determined.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I could say something to that, it might be easier to think of this as just getting the house off of the lot on Hudson. And then the problems they're going to have to face, they have to first do the demolition, then move the house off. That's going to be another issue that they'll have to work with through they don't know if they're going to elevate the house and everything. So all that may be necessary is just to make sure that that house gets off of the lot on Hudson, and then we'll make sure that it
Deal with whatever
with
those
whatever
issues
happens on
are.
second, they'll have to bring it to code.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
just one real quick comment, excuse me, in response to the very good question that was presented by Ms. Fogash. I represent a number of towns, and plans like this are presented from time to time, and we've deemed, and I think it's the custom in the industry, that you don't ask for the property owner to make a leap of faith so significant as to demolish their home in hopes of getting an approval to subdivide, that instead the approval, the subdivision plat approval comes with a condition that it will expire should the condition of removing the existing offending structures not be complied with within a reasonable time frame.
And what is, again, what do you consider a reasonable time frame?
Well, I referred to 3 months as being aggressive, but acceptable to us if this group were of a mind to grant us a lengthier period, we would welcome that, just to take into consideration any contingencies that could arise. And in this environment, it seems that when they can arise, they tend to arise. So we would like not to come back and ask for an extension of time, that's for certain. And we certainly don't want anything that's going on with the project to be the source of complaints or questions or inquiries of Ms. Frederick and the town that caused the town any aggravation as well. So the goal here is to be as prompt and responsible as possible.
The only other question I'm not aware of is if we are granted this partitioning, what permits would be required to begin the demolition and the move of the existing dwelling onto the new? And
You'd need a permit for the demolition, that would be number one. Then you need a permit to move the structure. And I think that's the start. And unless I get plans for what you really intend to do with it after that, I mean, that's the whole other permit. That's the foundation and whatever
Sure.
you're going to do with it. But just, and I think it's a decent timeline to get it. I don't see an issue with the demo and the moving it off the site. I'm not saying you have to have full plans by 3 months, just that. But then you're going to have to make some decisions because it's not going to sit there for month after month after month after month after that without any work being done. So you have to have a decent timeline to get that done.
Understood. What is the proposed length to receive the demolition permit and the move permit in your estimation?
The demo permit, if you submit the proper information and the application, that can be issued in a couple of days.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So can the moving it permit.
Okay.
That doesn't take very long at all.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
I have nothing further, unless there are questions for us, additional questions. I'd be happy to entertain those.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any comments? Well, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, before I make a motion to approve, need to make sure we all understand what the conditions are that would come with it if approved. I would propose, or I would put on the table, that recognizing the building inspector's view that 90 days is sufficient, the applicant saying that they could meet that, but that it is, that's aggressive, recognizing what the state of play or the state of things are in right now. I mean, I'm glad I had a mask in my truck because we just went to a new mask rule, and I don't know what other things might in fact be coming along. I would propose that it be, approval be conditioned on 120 days to provide sufficient time for acquisition of the demolition permit and the permit to move.
Okay. Any other comments?
And that would leave the whole issue of the approval by the building inspector of the actual placement of the house that was moved and meeting all of the setbacks and so forth as a separate matter, which doesn't involve our involvement, but make it clear that the applicant is still, if this is approved, is still going to need the demo permit, the movement permit, and then whatever interactions are required to meet the setback requirements and all for what on the survey is called Lot A and where that house would go.
Okay, thanks, John. Susan, I just have one question based on, a statement you made. How long do you think we should allow the moved house to just be moved and just sitting there without a final placement, if you will? Because I know your comment was, we don't want comments of, they moved it sitting on blocks and people yelling.
I
I
think,
mean, to get the permit, I guess, because that has all the requirements.
well, okay, we could set the time period as 3 months to get the demolition done, get the house removed from the lot, and to submit plans. Because once they submit plans, I can then coordinate it through the code with a 6-month permit, a 1-year permit, et cetera, and then follow through with measures to either get the house fully underway or have it removed permanently.
Okay.
So in the 3 months, they would have to finalize their plans. I don't think that's too harsh. That's, yeah, it's sufficient for getting them moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because the only actions they have to do really, besides their own homework on the back end, is to do the demo and move the house off.
Yeah, I think John wants to make a motion of 4 months. Is that correct, John?
120 days would be my motion. But
Yeah,
Okay, well, I mean, that's just
more
that
than
there, and
what-
that's, if 3 months works, 4 months works, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can
do
I,
I,
can I make
yes,
one,
Scott?
one comment? Just in my industry, we deal with house movers, and I just did it on my house. John Davidson was just in my office yesterday. I think the biggest potential wild card, I think Susan, you're right, like permitting time, like there's no problem getting from here to 4 months from now a permit, is weather and the house movers. There's only a few of them. So I think the question is there a provision for an extension if they need it, and what does that process look like, or is it drop dead 4 months and you got to come back in here and resubmit the whole thing?
I think that's the answer, yes.
Okay, so because Mr. Hudson mentioned an extension,
Okay,
not wanting to come in and file for an extension, I think we're saying, you all are saying there is no extension, you have to come back and refile.
yeah.
If
Susan?
I may. Well, if you ask for 3 months and they're giving you the 4 months, I think that John Davidson can get it done by then. I know he's busy, I work with him all the time, and we had some things come up that he had to get to, and he's very good at responding to that. So I think it's more than enough time.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I tend to agree with Susan that if we approve this, then, and the recommendation is an extra month of what Susan has recommended, then personally, I would not like to have to deal with with this item again. So I don't want the necessity to have this done in 4 months looked at as, okay, if we can't do it in 4 months, maybe we'll come back. I would never guarantee that another approval would be given in 4 months or an extension, so. Now,
And lifting the house and moving it off the lot is a 2-day process. It's not
yeah,
we're not talking about setting it back down.
yeah, plus
I just wanted to clarify.
they're moving on their own land, so it's a nice, easy, no road permits, I guess, or whatever. Okay, do I have a recommendation, John?
Mr. Chairman, just to continue with this discussion, my rationale for proposing 120 days is in fact to take into account weather and all of that. And, I mean, I walked this property when we approved that little finger
Yeah, the little.
back then.
Technically, we never approved the added property. Technically, on advice from the town's attorney, because it had happened, it had been recorded, money had exchanged hands, things were built, et cetera, he advised to do nothing with it. What came before the board was the combining, so we removed that lot line that they're trying now to put back. That was all that the planning commission could address at the time.
Okay,
Well,
I'd like go ahead.
my point is, I really don't care to see this issue or this property come back before us. It's already been an odd duck, and that's why I would, having heard what the building inspector said, I would propose 120 days
Okay,
without
I'd like,
an extension.
I'd like to call for a motion, please.
I move that the planning commission approve the application for petitioning for property identified as lots 12, block 27, at 515 Hudson Avenue in the R1 zoning district, to be approved conditionally with a 120-day time limit for the demolition and movement of the existing building.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have any second? We
Second.
have second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Thank you. Good luck. Welcome aboard, I hope.
Now, Susan, do we have to sign?
Okay, we're gonna take a we're taking a 3-minute break to sign and other things.
Oh, that's fine.
Good work. And we'll zoom in on it so that the audience can
Yeah.
see exactly what you're talking about as well for everybody listening.
Commission's back in session. Old business. First item on old business is the general review of the comprehensive plan. It is up on the board for everybody to look at. From our last November meeting, we went through the entire plan, and I think we cleared up any major things, plus I think we did most of the minor. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I would like to transmit this to the mayor as soon as possible, with the understanding that there are some changes that are going to have to be made, or some modifications that will have to be done based on census and things like that. With that in mind, I'm open to any suggestion from anybody as to how we want to proceed from here. Do we want to go through the whole thing one more time, which will take a while? Or are we satisfied with what we have is sufficient to send to the town council for their preliminary review? Any comments?
Yeah, my only comment is if we wanted to go through the boxes that are on the side to make sure that those are still either going to be done or that is something we can change. I think the first one that comes up on mine is on page 5. So, I mean, I'm going to turn this over to Scott. You probably have.
Yeah, I think, given that we went through the whole document last time.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable approach. Just check on those bubbles that are still in the margin.
Great.
And if we need to make any adjustments to those, if not, just pass it along.
Okay.
You turn it over to me and the council, and we'll go from there. And then I'm sure they'll be back and forth between.
Okay, I think that's reasonable and probably a good idea, and Scott will make you the MC, if you don't mind, to go through this. And you have it on your machine?
I'm looking at the tree document here.
Okay.
Hold on. Diane, I actually don't see, for some reason on this iPad view, the comments don't come up as clearly. Do you want to, if you've got it right there?
But, okay, basically on page 5, recommendation 3, we have, Kathy has put in a note that John needs to update. John Apple? What? Page 5? Maybe, I might be on an old copy, though. They should all be updated anyway, I would think.
Do you have a section number?
It's, let me see. It's recommendation, what's that under? Land use and annexation. Wait, actually, it's government community services and facility. Actually, this might be already done, because mine says it's dated May 11th, 2021.
The first bubble I have for John to update is the pursuing grants and low-interest loans. That's on page 5.
Yeah, is that it? Maybe I have the wrong page number. It's the middle of page 5.
Yeah, the only thing we would add there would be, I mean, we
always go after the state of Delaware awards municipal street aid. We normally do that. The police grant, and it would be working through partnerships and other agencies to determine and find applicable grant opportunities for town projects. Kind of an ongoing effort to attain funding for different projects. And if you wanted to either put something in on your own on that one, or send it my way, and we could write something up and get it to you.
There's no way to change it right now, is there?
Yeah.
Conveniently, Apple doesn't include page numbers when you look at it on an iPad. Page numbers don't exist to Apple.
Which Apple are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, I think there's going to be a number of these types of things, and I don't know that we should let them get in the way of submitting it, because that's my opinion.
Okay. I agree. John?
Mr. Chairman, I know we've been through it a number of times, but before we submit it, and I just throw this out, and at the risk of, by speaking myself, it's going to fall to me. We haven't had a final editor read the whole thing for flow and context. I don't know if that needs to be done now, because there's going to be interaction with the council. But I don't, speaking only for myself, I don't have an assessment of how final it is in terms of its readability and its continuity and its context with the expiring comprehensive plan. And I just throw that out, because I have not, and I'm a paper person rather than a screen person. I haven't seen a printed copy of where we are, what we have right now, to have gone through in my own archaic way and adjusted anything.
Okay, John, I'm also I don't want to read on the screen. I'd like to read it like a book. That's why I read books, not my computer. I think the flow and the format is very similar to what they've got now, or what we have now. So I'm not too concerned that is a problem. The state's approved it 10 years ago. They approved it 5 years ago. I think the most important thing that we can do is agree that there will be, not that we have yet, that it will be transmitted to the council, hopefully immediately, so that they can have as much time as possible, and then they can give the residents as much time as possible to comment on it. The council may decide that they would like us to sit down with them. That's up to them before they go forward, and if that's the case, then we'll be glad to do that, and it'll be at their wishes. So if we could sort of meld what Scott just said, if we go through it very quick and there's something that's not, that we think we have to take care of before we transmit it, then let's take care of it today if we can. If not, I would once we finish that and it looks pretty good, I would like to transmit it on behalf of the commission forward to the council ASAP. And they're also, and it'll be by mail. I will not, since the meetings are now back to the way they used to be, we'll just do it by memo and let the mayor decide how she wants to bring it,
And that,
forward.
that still you could parallel track that review, right? You could sit down with it, we all could sit down with it on paper,
Yeah.
do an edit while the council is looking at it. I think that would be reasonable.
Yeah, it's not finished until one, we do a public hearing on it, I guess, and the town council actually signs off and says, this is our 10-year plan. So, we're good. This commission is good to look at this until the council is going to say, yeah, this is what we want. So we can make, as the public can, we can make additional comments. So that, it doesn't close down anything, no. Susan?
I was just going to suggest that since we are submitting it to the council for their review, we're going to print copies for them to review.
Yes.
That we print sufficient, so everybody gets a fresh copy.
Right.
And we just mark it as our draft, and we all go through it one more time.
Exactly, I
Yeah.
agree 100% with that. And that way, the two old fogies, John and Mike, can sit down and in front of the fireplace and start going over it.
I think an important thing to do as part of that would be to actually come back to these initial sections, because one of the things we
Right.
did was we sort of moved past them and we said, we're going to come back and kind of recap these. So I think as you move through it, or as we move through it on our own time, it might be to come back and look at recommendation 2 for electronic government and make sure that it's actually capturing in that headline recommendation what we're actually saying we're doing later on down in the document.
Yeah. We're in agreement? Kathy?
Yeah, as council goes through it, when we get to that point, will council be making changes to the document, or will they send back suggestions for changes for us to do?
To be honest with you, Kathy, I don't know the details of how it would work out. But going back to the old fogey thing, I think you'll find that there are a number of people on council who probably would like it in paper as well.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
the old fogies,
oh,
yes, yeah.
well,
But I think the final approval then would be up to council with the, based on what is submitted, but also public comment as well. And then to go back and, I don't know, I've not been through this before, and Lou's not here, so I don't know how it goes back and forth. I'll have to sit down and talk with him.
I think what happened before, I was here when the first 10-year plan went 12 years ago. We transmitted it with the understanding that was it. We weren't going to do anything else to the report we sent. The town council had a couple of minor changes to make on it. They made those at the council meeting after public hearing, and then it was just, at that point, the corrections were made. I think what we may be doing this time, maybe, and again, it's up to the council to decide, there's going to be a little bit more give and take before it's finalized, because as you can see, we still have a couple other things to do, plus we can't do anything until we get the numbers, and the numbers are just not available, so, that's different. Plus, we had the University of Delaware, we hired a doctor candidate, and he was doing a lot of the work for us as far as the writing and putting together, and as we tried to do it this time, but the university wanted an awful lot of money to do it. I think they're up around $30,000 or $40,000 to do it, and it wasn't wise financially for us to do that. So maybe if we just go through it very quickly and make sure everybody knows that, like John knows he's got to write something there
And Andrea did a great job with taking the notes and all. She passed it on to me. We had gone through this before and I think updated most of it. If these smaller sections pop up to update, we can take the same notes and get it updated as needed.
John, could we have you, when you get the hard copy or go through it, however you're going to go through it, if you see somebody else in the staff needs to provide a comment, could you get them a copy of that and ask them to provide their comments?
For sure.
And use you sort of as a clearinghouse, as a senior staff member, and that would, I'd feel a lot better than, because if I ask somebody, they're going, who are you? And if you ask somebody, you're going to say, okay, we can do that. So I'd appreciate that if you could take that assignment and then, run with it. John?
Mr. Chairman, we're really showing our age, because I was also part of the last effort. And it was a collaborative effort, if you will. And I put that out there in context because whatever we send to the council, if they want to change the tense of a verb or whatever, they shouldn't have to send it back to us to do that. That it should be, they can make that change, and then at some point we're all going to agree that we've got it in the right context. So it's a collaborative effort with the council in terms of those types of things from my vantage point.
Yeah, the final word is the town council. And we don't have to agree with everything they've done, but if that's the decision made by the council, that's the decision made for the report. So you're 100% correct, John. We're just providing them with what we think is a good document for them to decide whether this is a document that they want to adopt. If they change a tense or change anything or take something out.
And I think we're also working on a deadline, too. We're given a 6-month extension, and that's until August 30th, I believe, Susan, wasn't it? I think it was 6 months from February to August. It's the middle of August somewhere, I think.
Did we get a response from the state? I have not heard.
Yes.
Oh, we
You
did?
sent it to me, I think.
I sent the letter out that I sent to the state,
There
but
was
I
a
never,
there was a reply. They said that they
I
gave
never-
us,
I
they said they
never
were
got it.
giving automatic 6-month extensions, and they would only extend ours until some date in August, I believe it was. So there would be, you have to, going back and forth with meetings, once a month is going to make it a little bit difficult, so we'll have to figure out how that would work.
yeah, I never got that, the response.
Yeah, I got it. It was in an email, because I remember it was shortly after you had sent the request.
Yeah, maybe it went to spam on my,
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, sure, if it was from the state, it probably went to spam.
Okay. I mean, we should get the numbers by March. So we should probably be able to have that completed by April.
Okay. Good.
But I think what Rosemary's saying is backing up what John is saying, is like, it doesn't need to ping pong back and forth between the council and the commission. It should just, if someone needs to make a change to it, then make a change to it. Even after the council has started to review it.
Well, yeah, and that's also one of the reasons that you're on the commission too. You're our liaison. So,
Right.
So you can tell us what's going to happen.
Can we just stay with this just for a second? So if the state is looking for this, say at the end of August, if they gave us a 6-month extension, between now and then, in addition to the work that we're doing, there's going to need to be a time for public comment. And I'm reverse engineering it here. Roughly when would we be looking at doing that? Because you can't just send this to the state without giving the citizens an opportunity
Right.
to.
Yeah, I think we're at the 98% level
Right.
ourselves. We can't expect the council to do it in a day.
No.
And it'll be up to the council to decide the best time for that. And we'll
Right,
just
and
be
there was some turn of phrase in their response back that I wasn't quite sure whether they had to approve it by August or the deadline for receiving it, because he had some mixed messages in that. So anyway, so I don't know, but the thing is, we don't even have it yet, so we can't establish any kind of a work.
Once we get it to them,
Yeah,
I think, as I said, I have not seen their response, but the ball's in their court, and they are kind of slow, especially over the summer. We know that's what's going to happen. And I would suspect that the town Bethany Beach probably has one of the better, if not the best, 10-year plan that they have. And they said that 12 years ago, and they just have to have their various departments look at it. And if they're doing it over the summer, who knows how long it's going to take them. If they want to delay it, it's up to them. But I think your guys, I think the town is going to be ready to meet any deadline they have. We're close. John?
Madam Mayor, I read that extension as meaning we had until the end of August for the town to submit it to the state. And I read it that way because the previous one, we submitted it in 2010, and it wasn't actually finally approved until 2012. And so I can't imagine that the state would be in any position to have their approval done. They would have needed it a year ago so. Anyway, that was my reading of it, was we had until then to get it to the state, and then it's out of our hands.
Did everybody else get the memo from the state? That's going to be my question. Have we heard yet? Oh, well.
I'll have to look in spam.
Yeah, it's probably where it went. Okay, well,
What's Scott doing?
I guess the best thing to do is let's just print the thing out. I'll write a memo for Andrea so we can get it transmitted to Rosemary with copies for all the town council members, and go from there. And then the old fogies, and then all you young people over here, the three of you, can look on your computers while the old guys will look at the papers. It's Kathy.
Just quickly went through this, and it really looks like 98% of it is updating the stuff we need from the census. And then there's a couple of things that John might want to follow up on with the fire department and water guys. Other than that, it looks like we're in pretty good shape for updates, except for when other eyes have a look at it, so.
Good.
I think Kathy's right. I think it's just waiting for these numbers and things that we requested, John asked people.
Good.
I agree.
Okay. Do we want to talk about the green before we make a motion?
Yeah, I think that's the probably one substantial update to it. And I don't want to use the word substantial to mean too much, to do too much work there. I just mean that Mark and I met on Wednesday of this week to start looking at language for the Green Bethany Initiative. It shows up in a few places throughout the document. I think, obviously, I'm aware that that still needs to change. Now, Rosemary is aware that that still needs to change. we can review that with the council and just let them know that we're still in the process of updating that
Okay.
and actually get their feedback as to what they think it should look like too.
Good.
So we treat it as a living document at least there.
Okay. Well, we only have one more item after this, so can I have a motion as concerning the transmittal of the final draft, or semi-final draft copy of the 10-year plan to our council, to the mayor?
And Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the commission forward to the town council our working draft of the comprehensive plan.
All right. Are there any second? No. No seconds.
Oh, any questions? Second, I second. I thought there was questions, I'm sorry.
Are there any comments? Yeah, the only comment I would make is that John has agreed to, send those highlighted sections out to the appropriate people and himself, that they can be prepared for the council. John, did you have a comment?
No, I was raising my hand
Oh, jumping the gun on me.
in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, thank you, Susan. Motion pass. I'll write something up so that we can get that to the council this week, this coming week. Okay, thank you.
Mike, can I just say, it's a heck of a lot of work, and I on behalf of the council, want to thank the Planning Commission for all the work that's been done to this date, and Susan, Andrea, John, everybody involved. Thank you. A lot of other towns just hire people to do this. I think it's important that our community members are engaged in this way. So.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank the commissioners. Also, Scott, you had two hats. You were commissioner and then you were representative. I'd like to also, I'd be remiss if I didn't note that Lou Kilmer, again, started this off and was our resident expert, so he deserves an awful lot of credit for this. And I would like to also thank my fellow members. Made my job easier. All I had to do is call for minutes, and you guys did the whole thing, so that was wonderful. Susan, thank you. John, I'm thanking you in the future. So, with that, very good. We have one more item. Continue discussion on adding language concerning pervious paving to section 425-27, exterior design requirements for residential buildings. Okay, who wants to head this up? Scott or Susan, or both of you?
Well, in the packets, you should have had something that I think we looked at once before, but then it sort of fell off our radar, and I'm bringing it back so that we can determine if you want to send something like this to be added to the code, or if anyone has thought more about how to look at it. What it says, I'll read through it just so that we can all get our heads wrapped around it. This small memo has first what I thought should be added to the code, and then a second section down there is just for you to see what these numbers would mean. I wasn't thinking it was going to be in the code, but just so you could sort of wrap your head around, how much is 40%, or what were we talking about? And then I have one more thing to add to this, to put another issue on the table that we hadn't thought about, that's becoming kind of prevalent. So what I had thought that instead of just looking at it as pervious, we'd look at it by naming it as ground covering permitted on residential lots. In all residential districts except for natural areas, all open air ground covering, including but not limited to new and substantially improved driveways, parking areas, walkways, at-grade decks, and patios, shall be of a pervious material as defined. Substantially improved shall mean an existing ground covering is to be more than 50% replaced, repaired, or resurfaced. Ground covering shall be limited to 45% of the lot area. And then a definition for pervious materials are materials that permit water to enter the ground by virtue of their porous nature or by their design, using spaces in the installation of the material to allow water infiltration. Examples of permitted pervious materials include sand, gravel, shells, and, when installed per current industry standards or guidelines, permeable pavers, pervious concrete, and porous asphalt. And then a definition for natural area is that portion of the lot that is dedicated to either trees, grass, flowers, bushes, other plantings, and/or mulched areas. Mulched areas shall be limited to vegetative ground covering only and not clamshells, decorative stone, or other similar hard materials. And then below that, I gave you some information just on what lot coverage would mean. We already have a maximum for structures of 40%. And a maximum for ground covering of 45%. That would mean on a 5,000 square foot lot, it would be 2,250 square feet. And then we went through the other types of lots and what that would be. And then what would remain after that for pool and/or landscaping would be 50%, 750 square feet, up to, on the 7,000 square foot lots in R2, would be 1,050 square feet. And the only other thought I had about this was how we looked at pools in general, or just leave them off the...
That was going to be my question. What do you want to do? What's your recommendation?
They're not pervious.
No.
They're-
Well, how
and
about,
we
how
do
about the
not-
deck around the pool? Is that
Well, the deck
considered a
around
deck?
the pool would have to be included, but a pool is not, a pool, by code, a pool is not included in your lot coverage if it is less than 2 feet above grade. So it's just, I guess it's just out there in that whatever is left over for landscaping or what have you. But that's the only other thing that's hard surfaced then. So you have your 40% for your house, you've got a remaining 50% that can be landscaping and/or a pool.
So if somebody used the 40% for the house and put in a large pool, you know, they could be using almost the entire lot, right?
No.
Okay.
Well, I guess pools are so, I'm not seeing anybody put in large pools, actually. But they'd have to count their driveways and everything as, you know, what they could cover.
So the pool would
Of
count
course.
as part of the 40%?
Pool doesn't count as anything, though.
Does-
I see your point, but yeah, the pool doesn't count as anything.
Well, that's, shouldn't we, I mean, I don't know, what's anybody's feeling? Scott?
The only suggestion I had for that would be to put a minimum landscaping. But that's hard to do. I mean, you know, what are we seeing for pools? 10 by 18, 12 by 20? So,
I guess my thought is if we count driveways, then, you know, a pool's definitely not pervious. If it is, it's not gonna be there that long. But a pool is definitely gonna be not letting any water out.
well, yeah, pool is the one thing that's not counted in lot coverage or in pervious. It's
I guess
not-
my thought is, you know, if you put a garden shed up, you know, it counts as,
You have to be near the mic, I think.
oh, I'm sorry. If you put say, like a garden shed up, that
Counted in
counts.
lot coverage.
Yeah, but if you put a pool up,
It's not counted.
Right, and so the loophole is you could, not that you could actually draw a plan like this, but you could cover 15% your required, not required, but remaining open area for pool or landscaping. Hypothetically, it could be 15% pool, and you'd have no pervious area on your, well, you'd have your pervious parking areas and whatever, but you wouldn't necessarily have any green space. And if the intent is to ensure some vegetative covering, we might want to say that the pool should be included in your maximum for ground coverage, which would again be a further incentive to have your house cover 32% of your lot on that sliding bulk density requirement. If you want a pool, you have to build less house.
Well, they do that in Rehoboth.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of disagree with that, mostly because, and maybe it isn't a problem. I'm bringing it up because it's something that occurred to me, but these pools are outrageously expensive. People are spending upwards of $100,000 for their backyard little pool areas and everything. So I'm not seeing that a large pool would actually fit on the lot. And maybe we just concentrate more on, well, I need a patio, and they're paving and putting stone everywhere and putting in hardscaped driveways. And so we limit what they can do with that. And maybe 45% is too much. Maybe you want to make that less. But, you know, it's just, we have to consider, we can call it a loophole, but how will they design for these and whether that's what we're intending. This makes everything they hardscape some kind of permeable material, except for the house and the pool, and any landscaping they want to do.
The difference in Rehoboth is the material doesn't have to necessarily be, they have a maximum lot coverage or ground coverage, but it doesn't necessarily have to be pervious.
I know. I talked with them. They're looking into it as well. And I talked with Matt about that when I started looking at this. And then I thought, well, I didn't really want to call it, you know, how much pervious can you put down? I just want all the ground covering. You have a maximum you can do. You can't cover any more of your lot than that. And if you want to put pools in there as a maximum something, then...
Susan, is there any sort of trade-off for having the pool off of the maximum structure of the house?
Is there now? No.
Is that a possibility? I mean, Scott, as an architect too, both of you would probably know that answer.
Well, let's look at the issues. The reason why you have a maximum for structures is because they are physically above ground,
Right.
large, and it's a zoning issue. You want light and air and everything, so you don't want them to be covering more than a certain amount of the yard. So you limit how much structure you can have in a yard. That's the one issue. That's why you have a limit, a percentage for lot coverage. Now we're looking at ground cover and how much is porous and how much is not. And, you know, because a pool doesn't obstruct any view for zoning issues. So that's probably why it was never included in lot coverage. But now we look at pervious. So I don't know whether you want to connect a pool to lot coverage. But it is connected to what is allowed to be permeable and non-permeable, which is why you might want to look at these and add something about, you know, this is a maximum for ground covering, and maybe we put in there only a certain percentage can be impermeable. So you can only cover 45% of your lot with ground covering, and of that, only a percentage can be non-permeable. And that would give them, that's your pool. That's the only other thing.
Yeah, just, you know, Diane, to your point, I think if you could potentially add something to the bulk density requirements and say, I'm not proposing this, I'm just saying you could say, like, if you want to, you can't have a pool if you cover 40% of your lot with your building or something. Like, that could be a sliding trade-off. But you could also effectively do that by saying, or limit how big the pools get or how big the impervious area is by just saying that the pool is included in the maximum coverage because then as an architect, your sliding scale, that's just going to be one more element in your sliding scale where you're saying, well, if my client wants a pool, they're going to have to give something else back. And I don't know that everybody's doing this, but I will say, like, in all of the houses that we've designed in town, the bulk density has come into play, and we've definitely looked at like the low end of the bulk density because it allows us to go to 3 stories or allows us to do a 312 roof pitch and things like that. And our designs are coming off of the 40% because we're able to argue to our clients like, hey, you shouldn't cover 40%. It's actually to your disadvantage to do that. Just as a note on total area, and Susan, you mentioned that maybe 45% is too much. I think, not really sure off the top of my head what the sliding scale is on parking, but let's say you had somebody tried to put the most bedrooms they could, and they were required to have 8 parking spaces. That would be 1,150 square feet of their property dedicated to parking. So that would be roughly half of the maximum ground covering.
Right, and a
Yeah.
lot of that parking probably is then also under the house.
Yeah, could
So-
be. Yeah, it could be under the
Could
house.
be a couple of, yeah.
Yeah.
Our,
So-
our parking does impact this. You
Yeah.
know, we're making them park more on their lots and,
No, and I think that's good. And so what I'm saying is that even then, even in the case where they didn't, they parked 8 spots outside the building footprint, and they took up 1,100 square feet of their lot, they'd still have 1,100 square feet left over for pool and patio and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's particularly onerous to say your pool has to be in that ground covering because it is impervious. It has to be covered in that 45%. If what we're trying to do is say we want at a minimum, this goes to intent too. So the question is, if our intent is at a minimum on a 5,000 square foot lot, you need to have 750 square feet of natural area.
that's what, if we put the pool in with the percentage for ground covering, that's what it basically comes down to. Which, if you think about it, everybody's going to take their little side yards and let them be free.
Which is, I mean, at least it's an improvement over what it is right now, which is like, there are a number of properties that are just gravel. And I'm really thinking mostly this is an issue, like I don't think this is a Bethany West issue because the lots are bigger and people are not going to just pave their whole yard. I think of it mostly as the character of the east side of the highway and some of the neighborhoods kind of north of Garfield Parkway.
All
on
the
west
R1
side.
districts,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. There's a much more succinct way to put that. But I think the intent should be that what we want to do is this is personally speaking, maintain the original character of Bethany Beach, which was, and that goes to bulk density also, which is smaller houses, more green space on each individual lot. And to the point about pools, I think while the pools are expensive and they're like if you talk to a pool company, they're 3 years out right now on starting a pool. The costs of the lots, specifically as you get closer and closer to the beach, the value of the lots, you're starting to see them in a price point where people are not particularly price conscious. So if a pool costs $200,000, they don't care. That's $200,000 fell out of their pocket on their way to the house, So they're like, okay, fine. And just anecdotally, we're seeing that in construction costs where a client comes to us and says, I want to spend $1 million. Then the budget comes in at 2, and they're like, oh, well, let's just do it anyway. It's like, in the 10 years ago time machine, nobody said I'm 100% over budget, let's keep doing it. So I do think pools they're going to be a pretty standard part of what's happening on people's houses, particularly on the east side of the highway. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. One other thing, in the natural area, I think we should, where you say mulch area shall be limited to vegetative ground cover only and then you enumerate a few things. I think synthetic grass should be specifically enumerated in there too, like that it can't be that. Or I don't know, maybe it doesn't need to be because it's already, but we're seeing a lot of that too.
We're seeing tons of that, but obviously that's not natural.
So maybe we don't need to say it. Maybe it just needs to be understood that, yeah.
I'd hate to see, and I agree with John. I'm sorry, house you designed for me is $2 million now. You didn't tell me that, but I can see somebody putting one of these outdoor kitchens and a swimming pool and a cabana and, you know, if they're moving here full-time, somebody deciding that they're gonna cover the pool so they can heat it, you know, with a, well, yeah, hopefully they can't do that, but
Well,
you could s-
you can't, if it's anything that's 12 inches or greater in height is considered lot coverage. They're not gonna give up room in their house for a cage over their pool. We don't have the lots big enough to, well, I do have a pool inside a house over here somewhere, but
you
that's
do.
really, yeah, it's old.
And that would be in your lot coverage anyway.
Yeah.
That's going to be governed by your maximum
Yeah,
buildable
see-
footprint.
The pool is not an issue with lot coverage, and the kitchens outside do count.
Yeah.
They count in your lot coverage. They're permanent, same as sheds, same as arbors, same as gazebos, all this stuff counts in lot coverage. But pools could be a part of ground covering, just as, all right, you're allowed so much ground covering, and only so much can be non-permeable. So then they would say, well, what would that be? That would be a pool, basically. Or maybe they want a solid concrete pad somewhere, you know, I don't know.
John?
Mr. Chairman, when the initial question came up, Susan said, and maybe we should address pools. My first reaction was, let's leave well enough alone. If we start focusing on pools, it may draw people to say, well, what can I do about that? I don't know. I don't see a need myself. I haven't been convinced by any of this discussion that we need to specifically address pools beyond what's on this draft document.
Can I offer a little pushback to that? We've designed 4 houses in town in the last 2 years. 3 of them will have pools. And I think the percentage is going to stay there or go higher. So, and I'm talking when I say in town, I mean east side of the highway. I think that in the R1 districts, you're going to see more and more pools, and maybe they don't need to be included in a regulation at all. I just want to point out that I'm really trying hard not to say tidal wave of pools here. Sorry. It's coming.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the original purpose of why we started talking about this, and it was to help with stormwater management, and that was the idea. We didn't want to have everything paved, if you will, that caused the water to have no place to go but into the street and into our drainage system, which can't handle what we have already. So, with that in mind, I mean, if pools are now becoming sort of not an amenity, but something that they want, and that's the end result of that is going to be more runoff and for stormwater management, then maybe we need to address it. But I'm not sure that I have the answer to whether that's the case or not.
The issue is that they just are impervious. So they're obviously storing water, but they're not intended to store rainwater. So so they are adding to your impervious area. I will say one other thing, which is counter to my own argument, which is that pools cannot be outside of your buildable footprint, or outside of your buildable area. So they are already restricted on some level, and that's to Susan's point. We're not going to see 50 by 100 pools out here anytime soon. And of the pools that we've designed that are going in houses, they're roughly 2 of them are 10 by 6. They're hot tubs. Right.
I mean, and disabuse me of this if I'm wrong, but if you have a side setback of 7 feet, you can't put a pool on that, that section.
That's correct. That's what I'm, yeah, exactly. It has to be within your
Right,
setbacks. Yeah.
It's not a situation where people are, in fact, getting around the setback area by saying, well, I'm going to put my pool right here.
So I think,
That's what I was trying to point out, is unlike lot coverage, it's not that type of zoning issue. This is more, that's why we're looking at the section we are, because it's more a design issue with, we want to limit hard surface.
Right.
We already allow 40% for the house. And so now we're looking at ground covering, what's left, and what do we do with that? Do we make all ground covering pervious? And if that's the case, then the one item that's kind of hanging out there that we have to face is, what do we think about pools? And it's not that they're a setback issue, they're not a lot coverage issue, they're just not pervious.
and maybe Susan, this is what you were getting at that was going over my head, is that because the pools are impervious and the coping is necessarily impervious, should we, rather than try to restrict them, should we just make an allowance for them within that pervious material that's X percentage of that
That's
pervious?
what I was saying, we have ground covering. Ground covering total should be limited, and then a part of that must be pervious. So if we say you can do 45% ground covering, but 35% must be pervious.
Yeah. And then what that would do, hopefully, is take the pool kind of out of the mental remaining area equation. People would include it in their impervious section of ground covering, and then that would leave, some people might treat it that way, some people might not. But the way it's, without that, the way it's written right now, the pool has to necessarily go into that 15% open area,
Right.
natural
and
area.
Yeah, that's what I wrote this, and then I started thinking about pools, and I was like, oh, well, we could include it in the ground covering part or not. But if we do, then that means that we get more landscaping.
Yeah. With that in mind, that I would definitely support the notion that you're saying you can have 45% ground covering, of which we pick a percentage, whatever that is, has to be pervious.
Well, I mean, the biggest pools I've seen are what, 12 by 18, maybe?
Yeah, probably. I mean, they just, once you take out parking and anywhere between 32 and 40%, you're just not left with the very much.
Right.
Yeah. So 12 by 18 is 200 square feet, plus or minus?
All right, we could just say, of which 200 square feet can be impervious. We don't want super large pools.
Yeah, or
anyway.
whatever.
We're gonna get to Rehoboth, where then they complain about the noise from pools at some point.
Well, I was thinking that also, especially if it's a rental house, I can see it already. That's John's problem, though.
So
We have never had a complaint.
so 215 square feet is roughly 5% of a 5,000 square foot lot. It's 4% or something. So we could say of which 5%, and then that way that gives you a sliding scale for the larger lots. So on a 7,500 square foot lot, you could have a slightly bigger pool and so on. Yeah. So that would seem logical to me. And I mean, I do think that a lot of the intent is to have pervious area for stormwater, but also to have natural vegetated areas for just the character of the town. And at some point, I want to add to this discussion a proposal on the tree regulation that whenever we want to. In our last meeting, in our October meeting, maybe that wasn't our last meeting, but our October meeting, we discussed the idea of like tree protection. Mark has actually drafted a proposed tree regulation, which I think would fall into this like remaining area for for landscaping. And we can talk about that now if we want to, or if people want to continue to talk about the open area impervious stuff. It's fine.
Well, I think we should decide what we want to do with this, because that's what we did last time, and then it kind of disappeared until now.
Okay.
So if anyone has any other questions, or,
I think this is important. I think it should be passed on to go into the code, you know,
Okay.
in whatever language we finalize.
I knew if we got two architects discussing, we get an agreement somewhere. We did.
If
Very good.
Mark was here, if we had three, though, we'd get nowhere. That's the problem.
yeah, we can't have three.
You can't have three architects in a room.
John?
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem moving ahead with this so as to keep it going, but it's not clear to me what we finally just decided under the information purposes. So if we could amend, if somebody can amend that for me, that would be helpful.
If we take my original statement there, ground covering permitted on residential lots. In all residential districts, except for natural areas, all open air ground covering, including but not limited to new and substantially improved driveways, parking areas, walkways, at-grade decks, and patios, shall be of a pervious material as defined. Substantially improved shall mean an existing ground covering is to be more than 50% replaced or repaired or resurfaced. Ground covering shall be limited to 45% of the lot area, of which 5% can be non-porous.
All right, so you're adding to this,
5%.
of which 5% can be porous.
Yeah, of which a maximum of 5%, I would think,
Non-porous
non-porous
or non-pervious.
or non-pervious.
Well, what do we want to use?
Pervious. I would say pervious.
Pervious.
All right.
Can you read that one more time, Susan?
Yes. Just the last sentence, where I said, ground covering shall be limited to 45% of the lot area, of which a maximum of 5% can be non-pervious.
Maximum of 5%, okay.
Okay. Does that, Susan, does that then, let's go down for your information purposes for lot coverage, does that change any of your descriptions there?
For the numbers under lot coverage? No, there's still only ground covering of 45%, lot coverage of 40%, and the remaining area.
Right.
Now it wouldn't be for pool, it would just be for landscaping, would be 15%.
Okay.
One note of clarity. If we just want to be sure that we're saying 5% of the lot can be non-pervious, not
Right.
5% of the 45%.
Well, all right, then add, of which a maximum of 5% of the lot area can be non-pervious. That's a good point.
Okay. All right, based on those discussions, then, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that the commission approve the draft document in front of us on ground covering permitted on residential lots as amended, and forward it to the town council.
I'm sorry, what?
And forward it to the town council for consideration.
Second?
Second. Kathy, second.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move that one along.
Cool.
All right, trees. trees.
Okay, so briefly, again, at our October meeting, we discussed the protection of existing trees. This came up because our comprehensive plan says the town provides for minimal protection. That relates to trees on town property. Again, in the notion that, you know, a green, kind of verdant Bethany is part of the character of the town, I think it makes sense to propose a not super onerous tree ordinance. So Mark has drafted a brief thing here. I think he talked with John Apple a little bit about like what it means to be a tree city, which we have that recognition, and some of this will tie into that. So I'll read this quickly. So this is our proposed tree regulation. The density requirements shall be met whether or not a lot had trees prior to the filing of an application for a building or demolition permit, with the intent that even if you have a vacant lot with no trees on it, once you substantially improve the lot, you should have to comply with this. Number one, each single-family residence lot in a residential district shall have at least 2 trees on the lot for each 5,000 square feet of land area, or 1 tree for each 2,500 square feet of land for lots smaller or larger than 5,000 square feet. In calculating the minimum tree density required for a lot where dividing the square footage of the lot by 2,500 results in a tree density requirement that contains a fractional number, that fractional number shall be increased to the next highest number if the fractional number is 0.5 or higher. Basically, you round up. If you need 2.75 trees, you have to have 3 trees. Each residential lot in a residential district other than a single-family residence lot, and each commercial mixed use or other lot not in a residential district shall have at least 2 trees per dwelling unit. In meeting the design requirements above, existing or new trees shall be a 2-inch caliper minimum. Property owners shall maintain all trees on their lots in a healthy and orderly appearance. So a 2 inch is a very small tree. So what we were trying to do is come up with something that like doesn't require you to hire a landscaping outfit to come in and put a mature tree on your lot. It's just saying you have to plant a couple of trees. We discussed the idea that like Rehoboth has a regulation where if there's a tree on your lot, you can get a permit to take it down. You have to replace it with this, in aggregate, the same amount of diameter of a tree, but we don't have that included here. So it's very simply, we think trees are important. You should probably have a couple. In summation, that's what this code says.
Just one point to that it then kind of goes together with this leftover landscaping area, because that would sort of mean that they can't just use their skinny side yards as the only area they're not going to pave, because you can't really put a tree there. So it may mean that you see more people beautifying or putting a tree for shade, maybe something nice in their backyard or something in the front.
Mm-hmm. I think that, this could obviously go further. You could describe which trees are allowable, like is a crepe myrtle a tree, you could take this in a bunch of directions if you want. I think the first thing to determine is whether the commission thinks it's an important addition to the code or not. The reasons for it are, we know, again, the character of Bethany, especially the south side of Garfield Parkway is a very treed area, or originally was a treed area. I think, trees are important in the way that they filter carbon dioxide. They also reduce ambient temperatures. There's a lot of advantages to trees. They happen to also be beautiful, in my opinion. So it starts there, is whether the commission thinks it's important that individual landowners be required to have a tree, so not just low grasses or whatever for their vegetation, and then builds from there as to whether, if that's true, then we adopt some code to be specific so that it's measurable for Susan when she's issuing a building permit.
And Scott, this would apply to new construction, or would this apply to every property owner in Bethany Beach that now suddenly would have to put a tree up or more than one tree. I mean, that's, you know, I've got to make sure I understand this, because I think that would come as a bit of a shock to a lot of people if they don't have trees already, that suddenly they had a requirement for a tree.
It is not intended that every current building owner making no improvements to their lot, that might need to be clarified in the way that this is written. But no, it's intended that if you're building a new house or substantially improving an existing house, and the substantial improvement definition is over 50% of the value of the existing structure. No, it's not.
It is, but then you're asking for people who want to do a reservation, that I have to get an assessment. So.
How do you determine it now if it's just sort of?
It's pretty much a visual thing. And if they're non-conforming, you look at the house, and I got a little one over in Bethany West, and I'm like, they didn't think they were in a flood zone. They are, but they really only needed to add flood vents, and then they were compliant. But they were definitely from the size of the house to the addition over. So I didn't need an assessment there, but sometimes you do. I'd limit it to new construction. All new construction. You're adding an addition. I mean, not like if you're just adding a dormer, but if you're adding an addition or a new house, you have to put trees in, because the addition might be taking up more square footage of the property, and may mean that they're covering more of the lot, and they then have patios that are already in place, and they may have to remove some of their patio to get that addition in to put the tree in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And it also ties into something that Rosemary's been working on separate from the town, really, is just like with Sussex County right now, you can, before you ever get a permit to do anything, you can clear cut your property.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I just think that, you know, we should be, while we are also working on issues that help protect trees outside of the town, we should be at the same time working on it to protect and encourage trees here in town.
Is there a way then to put something in that they cannot clear the lot until the plans have been approved, and any tree that's not in the way, they may need to if it's of value?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I personally would love to see that, right? It goes to, you've got, because right now there's not, if I own a vacant 5,000 square foot wooded lot, I can go in and clear the whole thing right now and plant grass or. 3
of them were just done in Turtle Walk, where there were lots of trees on it. They took down every single one.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, just sketching out things that I think Mark and I have thought about in ways that you could do that is to say that you have to identify existing trees over a certain diameter. You could say 8 inches, 10 inches, whatever. And that if you intend to cut down any tree outside of your buildable area, outside of your, your setbacks, you have to replace it in aggregate. So that way it would be an incentive to keep it, and then do the Rehoboth thing. But I mean, you could also just say, like, you can't. I don't know.
I'm just wondering, I wonder if they're just doing it because it's quick and easy, and it may be, I see developers doing this more, because some homeowners do care. But maybe it just says, you have to submit your plans, and then you have to go through and, look and see if there's any trees that are not in your way that are salvageable, that you would like to keep, and do that. And I can't replace in kind. Like the one lot, they took down 20 some odd trees. There's no place.
Yeah,
to
there's
put
no
them.
way, yeah.
But there might have been a tree in there that was in a very nice location that they might have been able to salvage.
Yeah, I mean, and you could require essentially a demo permit or something for that.
A lot clearing permit,
A lot clearing permit.
But I need the plans to see, and then, then they'd have to show, we'd have to see where the trees are. They'd have to.
Yeah, I mean, we do that all the time. We get, when we have a wooded lot that we're designing on, we ask our surveyors to locate any tree over 8 inches in diameter, and then we've got a plan, and we can actually design a house around it. It's more difficult on a 5,000 square foot lot.
Well, we really don't have a lot of trees left in this area, so adding trees is what you want to do on this side. But on west of Route 1, there are some nicely wooded lots that may
Yeah.
have something that,
Yeah, and I think the reason developers
Wanna think
clear them
about.
is because a lot of people don't have a vision, or they think that is a really difficult thing to do, so in a sense, the lot becomes more valuable, cleared, or easier to sell maybe. But I do agree, I think adding trees is probably more important, and if we could encourage, we could require the lot clearing permit and encourage the use of, or encourage them to protect existing trees that are significant, that would be great.
John?
Mr. Chairman, based on the discussion that we have, I think it is appropriate that the commission consider the issue of trees and so forth. Obviously, the level of detail that we talked about, I'm not in a position to make a motion on any particular language and all, but I think it is something that should be added to new business going forward.
I tend to agree with you. If we get a copy of the stuff that you and Mark put together, it'd be great for the next meeting. I do have one question. Is bamboo a tree?
It's an invasive species.
I'm thinking of this, I'm like, gosh, if somebody, my next door neighbor, his neighbor, planted bamboo, and let me tell you, he is no longer with us on the planet, but I remember trying to get the bamboo off his help him off property. I wonder if there's any way we can eliminate bamboo from the
Bamboo
town.
is a grass and an invasive species. So I don't know if we have any restrictions on invasive species in our, I don't often specify plants, but I mean.
I'd like to put something out saying you can't plant bamboo in the town.
It wouldn't qualify, I mean, we could say that. It wouldn't qualify as a tree, for sure.
Maybe I'll bring that up the next time we talk about trees.
Yeah, we should. For some reason, I thought that somewhere in our code, we already had something that said that bamboo was prohibited.
I have a recollection like you do. I think a number of years ago, there was some movement to have people get rid of their bamboo, because I specifically remember there were a couple of places in town that it may have been before your time,
Yeah.
but they did get on a couple of people about getting rid of the bamboo. I recall that.
What?
Well, that ought to be part of the top.
They must have missed your neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we ought to at least think about that. Let's discuss that at the next meeting, because
We could also just
bamboo
get a
is-
giant panda,
Yeah.
take care of it.
Right.
that would cost us too much. The Chinese charge $1 million a year, I think, for panda rental. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Just a real quick question. Back to the size of the replacement trees. If I were to take down a mature oak, I can replace it with a crepe myrtle, or?
Well, what we're saying here, if we took this forward, what it would say is you just simply have to have 2 2-inch trees. So you could take down a 24-inch oak, and if you still had 2 trees on your lot, you wouldn't have to do anything. What Rehoboth says about stuff like that is that if you take down a 24-inch tree, you have to replace that with trees in aggregate of 24 inches. So you could do 4 6-inch trees to replace it. That's difficult to do. Rehoboth doesn't have, some of the wooded lots that we do, except on like the north side there. But I think there is, as Susan was trying to get to, like, how do you protect a specimen tree like that? I think that it'd be interesting to consider how we do that, and that might be a trade-off, right? If that existing tree in the case that you have a specimen tree right in the buildable area, do we provide some allowance that you can encroach? I mean, that could be just something that the planning commission is open to if somebody comes to us with a, you know, a variance application or something, but.
All I know is my next door neighbor has a 6-foot diameter oak. And that's gonna come down someday because it takes up the whole front yard, I think. And, you know, you just can't do anything, destroying our water lines and everything else, so. Okay, well, we will put that on the next, meeting, which is when? 21st?
No,
19th, February 19th?
19th, February 19th.
Right.
Okay.
2/19/22 would be our next meeting. We will add the,
Mr. Chairman, does the 19th work for, because there's a public hearing, I mean, there's a public notice about that also, right? All right. We had our meeting today rather than when we typically did because there was a public hearing related to the partition. Except that, under the rules, as I understood them, if the first Saturday, if the first date of the month is a Saturday, that doesn't count. In other words,
it's not a rule, it's something that the commission wanted to do.
Typically, if you want to be right after the council meeting, you move it. But if you don't move it,
Right,
you just go
yeah.
forward.
And the reason I didn't move it was that the calendar that the town put out had today's date for this meeting.
I don't have a problem with,
Okay.
I'm just, I had always, I had operated on the third Saturday of the month. And some years ago, I was told, no, that's not the case. So,
Our meeting for the hearing,
for February is the 19th. The third Saturday is the 19th.
that's when we have that's when we advertise when we have another.
Okay. And then the March meeting is the third Saturday, which is the 19th. And because of Easter, we've moved the April meeting to the 23rd.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I was trying to do. I'm somehow the date keeper for meetings, and obviously,
Okay, so
all
we
I
will,
do is confuse people, including myself.
we will meet on the February the 19th. It will be, we'll cover the tree situation, and everybody think about bamboo. John, could you make sure we have no prohibition on bamboo before then? If you'll, yeah, because that will be open for discussion, whether it's allowed, not allowed, or just ignore the whole thing. Are there any other comments or statements any of the commissioners or staff would like to address? Or the mayor? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Good work, guys.
Not too bad, 11:50.
And gee, we're gonna have 3 architects with us next time, maybe. That'll be fun.
The problem is there are 2 architects, including me, and it was Susan and Mark, you'd be in good shape.
Oh, listen to you.